Hello, welcome to SOUNDBITES and thanks for coming. First of all, apologies, James Nash, who was meant to be reading tonight, has unfortunately had a family bereavement, so he can't make it, so our thoughts are with James tonight. But happily, Hannah Stone has offered to stand in for us. Hannah has numerous collections and collaborations published, which are available for purchase today at the table. She edits Dreamcatcher Journal, runs Nout But Verse for the Leeds Library, as well as other literary events in Leeds. A Londoner by birth, she has lived in Leeds for over 30 years and enjoys walking in the Dales, her volunteer work and singing. So I'll hand you over to Hannah. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah.
Can I use any of these microphones?
Either of these two. Yeah.
I'm going to use this one because it's in the middle. I'm not going to sing to you, you'll be glad to hear, but I have missed singing as much as I've missed live things. It's been awful not being able to do it. Now, I only had a couple of hours to think what I was going to do, so I decided rather than giving you any new stuff that hasn't been published, I just went to my books. I'm doing a special deal tonight, so any two of my books for a tenner. Shut up, you lot. Because you might have £10 in your pocket, you probably won't have £8.99, and it's all a bit tricky, isn't it? So if you like anything that I'm reading, the books are there, and it'd be lovely to make some sales. Right. This isn't the students back already, is it? It isn't the students back already, is it? Oh my God, the Otley Run. Okay. Right, I'm going to start with my most recent book, which came out of a wonderful opportunity I had with Leeds Church Institute, where I was poet theologian in virtual residence for a year at the start of the pandemic. And I'm just going to read one of the poems. I was writing a weekly blog for them, which was online, and then they turned into a book. And I was just going to read one for those, because I think as here we are out live in real life, seeing people, how do we feel about that? Anthropos. Locked within ourselves, we become touch junkies, bartering compliance for moments when skin is kissed by wind or sun. Ancestry websites crashed as we knitted the threads of 6 degrees of separation into squares for comfort blankets. In this Anthropos, peacocks parade in Dubai, ducks waddle across chic Parisian boulevards, Llandudno's goats make us laugh, bunnies hopping through streets on the South Island raise a smile. Our feral yearnings sublimate themselves in pumas prowling through Santiago, jackals given the freedom of the city of Tel Aviv, streamed straight onto our perch on the sofa. Our infant mouths muled for the nipple of oblivion, and empties crashed into splinters beside overflowing bottle banks. When we find the keys, we flinch like pit ponies released into daylight, stumble over hurdles we used to navigate with eyes shut. I wrote that a year ago, and that's what I thought that week. We can't remember, can we? Well, perhaps we can, but we were probably in zone something or tier something or colour pink or God knows what. Let's not go there. This is also published by Maytree, who published that, who are a lovely little poetry press based in Marsden. And I was really, really pleased to be the first poet that they published. Lots of local people have been published now. And we're sort of kind of a stable of poets. And I'm Maytree 1 and 23. Joe Williams is Maytree number, 26 or something, So it's a little club. And I'm just going to read 2 from this. And the first one is, all these poems are about the Pembrokeshire Coastal Path, and each poem title is a name of one of the little bays going around the headland on Strumble Head. And at Abercastle, there's a plaque on the harbour wall commemorating the first crossing by fishing boat of, somewhere from America. And I just imagined what it would be like for that sailor arriving. And there are 2 different kind of imaginings, really. Abercastle. Was it midday when you landed? Burly men gripped your aching limbs as you splashed into the shallows, and there was bunting and cheering, and your hand was pumped by every man jack of the crowd. There was a brass band playing Land of Our Fathers and Nat's Piss beer in pewter tankards, served from a barrel brought down from the Trevine Hotel, with a buxom girl twisting the brass tap in red, raw fingers, and dogs barking and snot-snouted lads shoving each other. Take a message to the telegraph office, mister? The pony and trap's waiting. Or was it dawn, with no reception but retired able seaman Billy Pritchard? He was watching the tide fill up the harbour, tamping down his first pipe of the day, and shifted his peg leg off the bench. He raised his tweed cap to you and asked, "Is it good crabs where you come from then?" And all you wanted was to be still, to no longer feel the deck ducking and diving, to hear the waves slapping the shingle, to see something that wasn't sea blue or mist grey or cloud white. That burst of gorse on the cliff, the flags of ragged robin fluttering in the hedge, even the yellow spirals of a land snail's shell. Okay. One of the things I really love about that part of Wales is that there's lots and lots of evidence of the prehistory there, and we know even less probably about those indigenous people than we do about this sailor who'd come over from America in the 19th century. So some of the poems are about that, and I'm going to have to remember my Welsh now. Have we got any Welsh speakers here? That's all right then, so if I say it wrong, nobody's going to correct me. So this is about a little tiny stone circle that you just almost miss as you're walking on the coastal path. Pwyl Olfa. Here is a circle of stone stubs in a meadow, staking the headland between gulls, cliff tops screaming, and the buzz of strimmers neatening field into lawn. If they were mushrooms, you'd call them a fairy ring. Too small to steer sailors, they chart other journeys. The sturdy booted hiker striding up from the village rests a hand on one, as if it were a trig point. Or they tell stories of smaller people with naked feet who levered them upright under stars whose light only now makes its way to earth. Missing Miles was my second collection, and it's published by the lovely Indigo Dreams down in Devon. And I'm going to read the title poem from here, which is called Missing Miles, and it's about that phenomenon where you're walking and you see, I don't know, anyone else like doing walking in the Dales or anywhere? And you see these signs saying so and so, X number of miles, and then you walk along a bit and it's still the same number of miles. So this is about what might have happened to the missing miles. I imagined it, but the walk is true. Footpath, Castle Bolton, 2.5 miles. The gate swings open, brushing nettles and benign cow parsley, leading to a path curving perversely through rough, sweet stubble, yielding to the sudden cool of a thicket of alders and willows, muddy boot prints beside a plank bridge. Then uncut hay sighs as you pass through it, looking for the next finger post. Footpath, Castle Bolton, 2.5 miles. The charitable view might be that the surveyor got distracted by the curlew cranking open his scimitar beak to split the still air, or lost concentration when a stone barn appeared, filling the summer sky with fidgets of swallows. Maybe it was a light-fingered cartographer hungry for a taste of summer peace. He hears the essence of the landscape in the peewit's peevish cry, gets the measure of the dry stone walls, gathers the aimless sheep and a handful of meadow cranebill, and folds the missing half-mile into his pocket. So a change of mood. I'm very pleased to be in two of the Valley Press anthologies. There is one of Yorkshire poetry, which I didn't bring with me today, and this one is the Valley Press anthology of prose poetry, and this is quite a different sort of poem. and you might hate it or you might like it if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far. Prose poems tend to just sort of go off and become a bit surreal and weird, so be prepared for that. Porous. No such thing as bad weather for walking, just unsuitable clothes. He was kitted out in Gore-Tex and wore top brand gaiters and carried walking poles. She wore a merino layer under an elderly anorak. It poured with rain, but they didn't mind because they knew they would dry off later. When they got back, they hung his jacket to drip into the bath, and she stripped off her wet jumper. She was soaked to the skin. Even her bra and pants were drenched. Then, no matter how hard she toweled herself, she could not get dry. And when she peeled off her skin, the ligaments and tendons dissolved into mush, and the flesh was saturated and separated like strands of wet hair. Her soggy bones drifted apart. She floated like seaweed. It is my fault, she thought. My skin is too thin, and I have become porous. He scooped her up and draped her over the radiator while he waited for the kettle to boil. Where am I going next? Another complete change of mood. Some of you will know the lovely Pam Scobie, who with me wrote Fit to Bust, which is, as the title suggests, to do with women's bodies. It's subtitled An Unwrapping of Female Desire and Attire. And there's lots of stuff in this. Pam's is absolutely hysterical and very raunchy, so you really should buy a copy. And this is actually us performing it in Otley just before the first lockdown. I don't know how we managed to do it, but it was just amazing. It was literally about 5 days before lockdown. So I'm going to read a couple from this at different points in my reading. And this one is from the section called Illicit Pleasures, and it's called The Renaming of Cats. Julie Birchall ridiculed the pleasure women take from lying in a hot bath or placing scented candles round their home. Orgasms alone gained her imprimatur, however they were obtained. For those of a less demanding nature, let me recommend owning cats. They probably won't pee on the floor once they're litter trained, and they won't disturb you with their snoring or hog the duvet. And if they do, their purring atones for the crime. They won't say, "I thought you were only talking," when you try to have a conversation. So the question remains, how many and what to call them? One is fine, a rational choice, companionable. Two, still normal, and if rescued, also virtuous. I've got 2 rescue cats. More than 3, and you risk being called a mad cat lady. That's if you really give a fuck. Having acquired your feline friends, do name them inappropriately. There's Hecuba, witchy, empowered. Delilah, the depilating emasculator. Pudenda, to share the shame of our genitalia. Lascivia, one for the neighbours to enjoy when shouted from the back door. Or you could settle for just plain pussy. I'm going to skip the second one. We started a bit late, didn't we? Shall I just read the set I've prepared? Because we're a bit fewer in number than we thought we would be. So you won't start throwing rotten tomatoes at me if I... Right. So this is, having introduced the theme of men and women, this is one from a sequence about a very bad man that I was with about 10 years ago. And it ended up being really good, actually, because not only did he buy me a new dress every week for about a year, but I was so traumatised by us breaking up that I wrote loads and loads of poetry, and there's a whole sequence of it here. And this is one that is sort of kind of a bit of a found poem because it's got some definitions of a shipwreck in it, and you will see these jotted around the poem. Definitions of a shipwreck. 5 p.m. Unusual time for him to text. Just seen a professional. Confirms I have serious issues. Too drained to talk tonight, if you don't mind. I was patient. Tried not to hassle him. Twisted the commitment ring he'd placed on my 3rd finger 3 months before to remind you what you mean to me. Channels of communication closed one by one. The telephone seemed out of bounds, at least until he'd got his head into a better space. My pulse raced when his name pinged into my inbox, but there was little enough to read. Eventually, I got the drift. Jetsam. Part of a ship, its equipment or its cargo that is purposely cast overboard or jettisoned to lighten the load in times of distress and is washed ashore. A turbulent time followed, fear mostly flooding hope, though both bobbed up and down on the waves. I clutched at straws. Finally, he roused himself, spelled it out blatantly. Lagan, goods or wreckage that is lying on the bottom of the ocean, sometimes marked by a buoy, which can be reclaimed. I offered alternatives, compromise. A patch of grass beside the bench is seared into my memory, marking where I sat when I last heard his voice. I asked about the ring which I'd swapped from left hand to right. Silence was eloquence, or was the signal breaking up? He posted my house keys, bundled the designer dresses into cardboard cartons that hijacked me at work one morning, blocking up the post room. Derelict. Cargo that is also on the bottom of the ocean, but which no one has any hope of reclaiming, may also refer to a drifting, abandoned ship. I'm going to read 2 poems now about my boys. They live in London, so I have hardly seen them, as you can imagine, in the last 18 months, and I've really, really missed them. And also, it's the summer vacation, and both these poems relate to them kind of in the university context. So the first one is for my older son, who I am so unbelievably proud of. He's an anaesthetist in a London hospital, and you can imagine what he's been going through. Anyway, this is the first time he came home from university for holiday. Vacation. Being merely human, it isn't the empty nest that ruffles my bosom, but the denuded fridge. For 2 decades, I nourished you. First, the blind ignorance of a dividing cell that sought to split my body. Then, month after month of your voracious mouth sucking my goodness. The downy sphere of your butting head cradled like a third breast against my eager heart. Now, hungry for knowledge, which I can neither give nor share, you feed yourself mysteriously on books and screens and caffeine shots, a lean Columbus returning with new fruits, your discourse reshaped with clever acronyms, sustained by continents of discovery and an expensive taste in biscuits. Last night, as I drifted towards sleep, I heard your lovely footfall descending through the darkened house, the squeal of the fridge door, and the unmuffled clatter of cutlery. And this is son number 2, doing something that I guess parents haven't done for the last few years, which is that trek to your children's university of choice to suss out whether it really is where they want to go. So this is son number 2, and I have to say the bad language is all his, okay? It's nothing to do with me. Banbury. So it's next stop Oxford, but he's pissed because his fucking expensive headphones are all crapped up. All those paper rounds for nothing. And can he have a loan of mine to listen to an episode of South Park, digging crossly at a much-picked spot? I pass them over, but want to warn him there'll be a homeopathic residue of the Dichterliebe, or maybe a Bach cantata, which might interfere with reception. We're getting there. So another collaboration I did was with a historian friend of mine called Rosemary Mitchell, and it's called Holding Up Half the Sky, which is what women do. We hold up half the sky. And we were giving voice to women throughout history and in contexts where they often didn't have a voice of their own. And some of these poems relate to pictures, and you know how sometimes you can read an awful lot into a picture. And I may have got this completely wrong, but I went to a conference in Boston, and went to the very, very wonderful Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which is one of my favourite places. And Isabella Stewart Gardner was an amazing sort of collector of artefacts, and she assembled this stuff in a building that is designed to look like a Venetian palace on the outskirts of Boston and quite close to a baseball stadium. So I just imagined her, and I didn't know many people at this conference, and American conferences are a bit weird, but they did have an awful lot to drink, so I was a bit tipsy in walking around this museum. The conference reception is held in the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. After a long day of presentations, the delegates have plenty to discuss. Sloshed on peach bellinis, they screech amidst the ferns that shade the courtyard pool. Strains of Dvorak climb the creepers, threading patterns through unglazed Moorish windows. The shallow treads invite assent. A tipsy visitor joins a quieter colloquium on the piano nobile. A Flemish matron, glazed into a wimple, gazes at a beautiful boy as he springs from a sarcophagus. A dozen Madonnas compare notes on their holy joys and mysteries, commiserate about their son's 5 wounds. Stewards smile, they have no script. The velvet ropes speak their restraint. The guest climbs another flight of stairs, saunters past many other treasures, finds the portrait of their hostess commanding a corner vantage point. A small ocean of pearls girds her waist, rides the swell of her hips. The glass is empty now. The reception draws to a conclusion. It is time for delegates to board buses, queue for elevators, to rooms where they kick shoes into corners, swirl into sleep. It is time for Gainsborough's sheep to stop nibbling, for St. George to stay his stabbing hand, for tapestries to relax into limp creases, and snuff boxes to switch off their enamel glow. In the foyer, assistants pack glasses into boxes, and the thousands of words smeared on their rims begin to evaporate into the mock Venetian night. A bit of humour now, I hope. This is from my first collection, Lodestone, which was published by Stairwell, who also published the Dreamcatcher Poetry Journal, which I'm now very pleased to be the editor of. I don't have a television anymore, but when I did, because I've always worked from home a lot, my guilty secret was I used to watch trash TV while I ate my lunch. This was probably repeats of some detective thing. I can't even remember what it was now, but there was this absolutely odious woman bullying her husband in the advert. And so she's come to an untimely end. You snooze, you lose, Colin. I loathe this woman who's paid by a chain of leisure hotels to interrupt my viewing, punctuating with her chummy bullying the narrative of my chosen detective drama, its splashy Cornish scenery and gritty characters. I hate her bright and breezy manner, the way she pushes to the front of every cupcake queue, haranguing her shadowy mate without dimming her kilowatt smile. Frankly, I'd rather the static nylon sheets and dripping shower of the cruddiest B&B than a night in the hotel she advertises. Imagine going down to breakfast in yesterday's walking kit, which passed the sniff test, and finding her at the buffet, fresh and tangy as the fruit platter, rolling her over-painted eyes at waiters chosen for exotic but unthreatening ethnicity. I'd lurk at the back of the pack with Colin the loser, dragging our heels behind her Jimmy Choos. We'd pile too many sausages onto our plates and plunge the coffee clumsily, a fountain of granules caffeinating the cloth. With luck, he'll wake one morning and find she was just a bad dream. Better still, he'll stir, peer over the edge of the king-size moraine of pallid sheets, and discover her lifeless body splattered on the shag pile and find a heavy blunt object clasped in his sleepy hand. Right, 2 more. Another one from Fit to Bust. I I'm very interested in international affairs and in history. And this poem, like quite a lot of the poems in this collection, is based on truth. And we were writing a lot about corsets. I said to Pam, why don't we write a collection about control underwear and why men want women to occupy less space than they naturally do? Discuss. The facts in this are absolutely true. So I'll just give it to you as it is and you can work out what it's about. The war effort. In 1917, the American War Industries Board asked citizens of the United States to stop buying corsets. This was not a prurient request, but desperate measures. Every scrap of metal was needed for warships to fight the Hun. Letting it all hang out saved 28,000 tons, enough for 2 battleships. This gave a warmer glow than knitting socks for our boys on the front, and nifty needles nimbly patched old stays. It would be unpatriotic to long for the day when support returned. Boy, how those men who made it back were mere fractions of themselves, limbs lost, eyes glazed, hearts holding horrible memories, nights filled with ghastly dreams and sudden cries. At least the womenfolk could hold it together now. And finally, from another very different area of my life, I used to work as an academic in the field of theology, and at one stage had a really fun job at the University of York writing histories of cathedrals for some DVD-ROMs that they were producing. And this is another kind of ekphrastic poem because it's from a picture of, I think it's Exeter Cathedral. I've taken some liberties with the geography. And at the bottom of the tower door, there was a little round hole carved out. And this was for the resident rodent catcher, seriously, to come and go about his business. But in my imagining, this cathedral-dwelling cat was again, I'm afraid, rather rude. So this is not my words, this is his words. And he was a bit of a square peg. The mice are the worst. Rats, you can get your head round if you accept they're vicious brutes with no morals and bad breath to boot. But mice, devious little bastards. And so many of the buggers, just as you clamp down on one, up pops another between the curls of the bell rope. You'd swear they were laughing at you. OK, so I'm getting on, and losing that tooth hasn't improved my looks, not that the verger's tabby minds a jot. But I'm still up to the job. That penny a week to keep me in scraps is well worth the candle. Talking of which, the candle ends those vermin chew, scores of them. And don't get me started on how they soil the purificators, though why the sacristan leaves them in the tower is beyond me when there's that fine linen-fold press for storage. The tales I would tell if only I could speak, not just the messed up linen, but how he carries on with Mistress Anne from the bakehouse. Fresh muffins, my arse. Any fool can see what he's after, though when you see how enticingly they rise above her bodice, I suppose muffin's as good a word as any for those bubbies. Sometimes I think I'm wasted here, a cathedral rodent catcher in a Mercian city. That hole in the tower door isn't a bit too tight for my lean flanks, but it's getting to be quite a stretch down to the step, the stone slab that takes you into the cavernous barn of a place, thronged with pilgrims and stall holders, not to mention the pomp and circumstance. Barely a moment's peace until dusk. And another thing, I suspect they're dissenters. Where will it end? Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, especially for stepping in at the last minute. Can I have a round of applause for Hannah Stone, please? Thank you. We're off to the open micers now, and we are actually changing the microphone covers just for safety reasons. So I shall choose at random order. Let's have Jean Watson. Thank you.
Hello. Right, I know we're all very fed up with lockdown, but I'm doing these 2 poems and then that will get them out of the way. So these were written in April last year. And we've got goats in one of them as well. The goats in Llandudno. This is called Stay at Home in Spring. I decided to write this. I started off trying to do haikus, but then I wasn't sure if it was a song, and the middle section isn't haikus, so. But we might not want to sing about these things. So, stay at home in spring. Stay at home in spring. Bamboos climb in garden plots. Pregnant pandas glow. Summer weather dreams. Lockdown stretches time and space. Faces almond pale. Cooking is an art. Harvests strange from shopping trips. Taste buds redefined. Rooms are now tidy, lost treasures recherished, and memories past come to call. Papers are sorted and stacked for recycling, boxes and bags in the hall. And TV lives its life, takes us travelling far and wide, best to ration news. YouTube makes us laugh. Monkeys learn to wash their hands. We do indoor gym. Stay at home in spring. Now this is the one that mentions goats. Who's in the zoo? We are in our cages. Wildlife comes to visit. Goats make town centre trips, grazing as they go. We have boxes to watch, moving pictures and sound machines. Birds outside are building nests and planning flights to foreign lands. Food delivered to our doors. Food delivered to our doors. We cook and keep our cages clean. Our carers work to keep us safe, and we sing to them from balconies. Wildlife relaxed in the great outdoors. We've all gone home to live our lives and leave them space and peace and quiet, free to be themselves at last. This is a poem I wrote many years ago, and it's not exactly me, it's a bit added to. There are flavours of me in there probably. About the nature of love, really. The bewildering nature of love. I always try to keep my cool, but get things wrong and break the rules. Everybody takes me for a fool. How come you love me? I've got no money for a start. My worldly goods have long since fallen apart. I live on music, books, and art. How come you love me? I try to analyze your brain, ask questions time and time again. I must be an incredible pain. How come you love me? With housework, I'm not tainted. Dust and I are only visually acquainted. I'm not aiming to be sainted. How come you love me? I love to hide away in books, and heaven knows I just can't cook. and never was I hot on looks. How come you love me? Perhaps I'm last instead of first. Maybe I'm a challenge at my worst. Maybe you like appalling verse. How come you love me? I can't be with you all the time. It would be a pantomime, and I'm decades past my prime. How come you love me? I've taken everyone I know for a ride, and it looks like I've nothing left to hide. In every fault, I'm qualified. So, how come you love me?
Thank you, Jean. Next, we shall have Billthorpe Simons.
Evening, everybody. Just 3 poems to read. The first one is called Cause and Effect, and it's a true story. This really happened to me when I was a small child. Cause and Effect. I tumbled into the black slime of the bog hole, yelling until my mouth filled and I sank like a sack of stones. I could feel the peat suck me down, its dark malignancy gripping me fast. 9 years old and about to die. It wasn't fair. But fairness, as they say, is not part of the divine plan. No deity had cast the die here. Simple cause and effect. No mystery, no magic. Cause and effect, action and reaction. If an older boy, Martin, had not been there, this poem would not be written. That is stating the obvious, and yet it seems astounding. One moment on death's unwelcome threshold, then Martin's firm grip on my leg, pulling me from the bog's wet grip. How flimsy, how vulnerable, the spark of life, the thin division between being and not being, our blind trust that cause and effect will operate in our favour, our astonishment when it does. Thank you. The next one is, I suppose it's a sonnet, but it's the theme is tortured love. You know, the falling out of love with love, if you like, disillusionment. Tortured love. I have endured the agonies of love, the scourge, the pain of amorous desire. My heart has sung with angels up above, while down below I've burned with devil's fire. Love, they say, is a gift bestowed by God, a union of the body and the mind, a union of the body and the soul, until the day they place the final sod upon your grave and death achieves its goal. Yet I have found that love's a sea of pain, alleviated sometimes, but not much, with tenderness as light as summer rain, and gone again as quickly as the touch of insect wings that flutter in the dark and leave behind them nothing to remark. Thank you. And this is one I wrote a long time ago. I would call it a grammatical fantasy. It's called Pecking Order. Verb, an eager, tail-wagging little word, running wide-eyed between its bigger brothers. Words such as conjunctions, prepositions. One of grammar's doers, never content to lie supine, always knowing that action speaks louder than other words. Pronouns are full of their own importance. Adjectives are pure decoration, and nouns are merely appellations. The sturdy verb, though, moves mountains, spins the galaxies in their endless courses, and propels the heart through the cannon muzzle of emotion. The verb is the jewel in grammar's crown, far superior to the common noun. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next, can we have Pamela Crow? Yeah. Is that okay?
okay on this one? Hello, everybody. Hi. I'm going to try and do these off by heart. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, my name's Pamela Crow. I live very locally. I've only been here a couple of times, but it was probably about 2-3 years ago. So I've been doing a lot of things kind of on Instagram and on Vimeo and YouTube, but not live. And it's really nice to be in front of people again. So I'm just going to do 2 poems. One that I've written in the last week called Overpriced Custard Tart, and one that I've written more recently, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So Overpriced Custard Tart is a work that came out of a recent holiday to Suffolk, and a bakery that I went in, and I go in every year because we visit there on holiday. And it was on a recent trip that I felt inspired to finally write a poem about something that occurred probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I was in the same bakery. So it's called Overpriced Custard Tart. It was Suffolk, a bakery, very nice cakes, and the girl serving me narrows her gaze. "Excuse me, I can actually see your bra right now?" "Oh," I said, with faux sang-froid, perusing a sausage roll. "It's just that I can see it," she said, her eyes scone cold. All walls zoomed out at this, and I became widescreen, like Kristen Wiig in Bridesmaids in the jewellery shop scene. I stole a glance to my clavicle, regretting it as I did, checking my own beautiful shiny shoulder to see if it was legit, which, having dressed myself that day, it was. "It's okay," I said. "It's supposed to look like that." Oh, I'm going to have to check my notes. Hang on. Oh, that's it, yeah. "It's okay," I said. "It's supposed to look like that." I loved my Topshop bralette dearly, and the kids were in earshot. So I drew in a short crust breath, cooled rack, and persevered. Stage directions, ficelle, meringue, croissant, millefeuille, lime curd. 4 pastel de nata, please, I said with a taut stare. "It's just that I can see your bra," she said. "Fuck you," I whispered under my breath, feeling my courage deplete. You don't get this treatment in Greggs, I thought. They just bag it and bin the receipt. So I summoned the bottle I'd kept in reserve, and with all of my raspberry heart, I cancelled the order for pastel de nata and ordered a large custard tart. Thank you. And the second poem I'm going to do, the second of 2, is called 150 Words as I Wait for a Tree to Grow Back, Part 4, or Mercy. And it's the 4th poem in a series of so far 4, which are a little bit like the Nescafe adverts from many years ago, where there's a kind of building romance happening purely in my head with a neighbour. And I wrote the first of these 4 poems at the start of lockdown, not really because it was lockdown, but because I work from home a lot, and I can often see what's happening out the back of my window when I'm working. And I'm really interested in love in a lot of my poems, but I'm interested in how ridiculous we are when we're in love, and how we often kind of project things onto people or imagine things. But how kind of fun that is. Why not, you know? So 150 Words as I Wait for a Tree to Grow Back is part 4, or Mercy, is the 4th one. I'm going to do that now. Okay. Man at the back has stopped catching my eye, and now I'm in a terrible despair, where each morning I stand pressed up at the glass, trying hard to make him swivel in his ergonomic chair. Man at the back keeps his eyes fixed at the screen and won't so much look sideways to acknowledge me. Well done, man. And probably has decided I'm not dazzling after all, or I'm too old, or too angry, or too ugly, or too tall. Man at the back might just like the idea of me, however, doing stretches, multitasking, hanging laundry in all weather, as I limber up and wobble, trying to propriocept this world, wondering who can love this tyrant, come heretic, come sad girl. Man at the back comes down one day to monitor the fence, which has withstood a pandemic and my year as malcontent. As my eye contact holds payload for the trees ripped from my land, I say to him, plant saplings now, and he takes one from my hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. That's great. Thanks. Is Christine here? Christine Weston? Yeah.
I'm just going to read a poem that my friend wrote. She's been married for 35 years. She got married when she was 17. Her husband was 37, and he's been in a wheelchair. He can't walk, and he can just about... Oh, is this one? He can just about use his hands. Okay, right. And she emailed it to me today because I couldn't find the paper version. Sorry, no, that's the wrong one. Yeah, sorry. That's it. Right. It's called The Ancient Window. I am the gnarled oak frame, you are the wavy glass. Together we support each other. We've been united throughout the years. We're inextricably linked together. We were crafted many centuries ago. We know that we are very old. We've braved the heat, the wind and rain and innumerable years of cold. We've lived through harsh winters and man's many generations. We've stood the test of time. Nobody knows how long we may have been, for as long as the earth has the sun. Countless seasons, numerous faces have passed us by through the years. Many more than we could know, so much laughter and so many tears. Hands now gone from time and place covered my old frame with wonderful paint, and those same hands buffed your wavy glass till it could shine no more and was reflected in the stars. That's it. That's it.
Thank you. Jim, are you ready to go? Jim Marlin? Yep. Thank you.
Right, this is supposed to be a Vinanella, which I wrote last week. Getting a bit older, I had these sort of silly thoughts in my head. It's called Inner Seeing. I want to go behind that strange curtain. Before an empty darkness descends on me, I want to know what songs are in its fountain, and to adjust to what is now uncertain. Need to be able to comprehend and see. I want to go behind that strange curtain. Not to fall like a slithering serpent, but read the signals while walking free. I want to know what songs are in that fountain. Understanding what is coming through the frame, be able to take it further and to agree. I want to go behind that strange curtain. Can I accept the signs and climb that mountain while I'm wandering in a state of semi-glee? I want to know what songs are in the fountain. While the fear of not knowing is a pain, I would like to know what will be, will be. I want to go behind that strange curtain. I want to know what songs are in its fountain. Thank you. quite a few years back, it is now, when our friend, no, I won't call him friend, Donald Trump started to talk about a fence, building a fence. I wrote this one, and I called it The Tired Mexican. A lonely figure on a windy afternoon shuffled in from an unforgiving border. With sombrero on head, walked into the saloon, looking fierce with an app for disorder. Snuggled under a bright red shawl, while piercing eyes peeped beneath his rustic hat, and a strong worn nose suggesting a brawl. But he didn't really look like, he wasn't really ready for that. Then, as he started to sort himself out, he spoke a fear of a disturbing structure, and how this wall is causing ambiguous doubt, which if built will divide an old culture. A weary, tiresome voice turns to the crowd with pleading words, don't let it be allowed. Thank you. This one is, I think I had an ancient relative, was in the First World War, and I've entitled this 1918. At last we are back to being family, back in freedom, a new world order. The shootings are back from insanity. Finally, at last, we can cross all borders. Wasted time with lots of lives lost, while leaders and generals let it all happen. Now back where we accept all the cost, forgetting all, it was done with passion. But with 20 years and we're back in war. What have we learned in those years of our peace? Why return to what we always abhor? Let's all go and let's have release. New beginnings will always come again. This time, can we learn and not do the same? Okay. And this last one, as it sounds silly, I've always wanted to be a bench, and eventually I may be. This is called My Bench. I've always wanted to be a bench, the relaxing nature of the dense, smooth wood. Whilst I know that does not quite make much sense, the feel and touch ingrains my mind so good. I'd have my bench by running stream, friends walking by asking, do you remember him? Wedged in woodland where it can be seen, where passers-by can sit or have a swim. But of course it's all in my confused mind. I'm not about to leave this world yet. Time is still with me, sticking to its thread. Maybe after many moons with no regrets, then travellers can take the strain from tired feet and sit in silence on my special seat. Thank you.
Finally, just to plug, because we've got two, as well as Hannah's books which are out there, and there are 2 free books as well. There are also 2 collections which are just £1, which goes to Heart, and £3. The first poem is by me. It's called Love's Cost is Love. Love wears a heart, that piece of flesh, that token. It steals the heart and all it holds. And all it holds, should it remain unbroken, is full of light when it's returned. But what has love to do with me in darkness? She stole my heart with knowing hands. She hid my heart in distant lands. Love's light is lost. That is the cost. Out of love I write, for out of love I am. Thank you. And then from the second collection, I've got just 2 short ones as well. But they mirror each other. When galaxies break anchor. When the Milky Way and Andromeda meet, it won't be love, it will be destruction. Linking star-strewn arms, a dance of death will begin. When Andromeda kisses, she takes the life. The whirligig will grow in pace, suns will be thrown into space, whole systems linked for billions of years will fail. Moons will perish and comets lose their way. Matter will clash with antimatter, the gods themselves will scatter, and come the end, their two black hearts will join to form one heart no bigger than a coin. Thank you. And this is the second part, which is the more positive outlook, and apparently this is more likely to happen. When galaxies interlock, when the Milky Way and Andromeda meet, it won't be destruction, it will be love. A marriage of stars, a consummation, two galaxies lost in one another, where gravity serves as a link to their embrace. All heavenly bodies will have the room to breathe, the space from sun to sun remaining. Pulsars will beat with heart anew, moons of all colours will rise above planets where star-crossed lovers gaze, and from afar, where we call night, one heart will shine a love so bright. Thank you. Can we have another round of applause for Hannah Stone, who stepped in for us today as well? And thank you for everyone who's come, especially the open micers. So a round of applause for everyone as well. And all I've got to tell you, I think, is that the next Soundbites, hopefully, we're planning to do it live at Heart in the same venue. So that will be on Monday, the 13th of September at 7 o'clock. And the headline of that time will be Joe Williams. Okay, thank you for coming. Yeah.